So let's get things started here, Eli. On Saturday, 12:30 p.m. tip-off on Fox, number 17 Creighton at Butler. These two teams played already this year. Butler squeaked out a win in Creighton. Haslametrics, our good friends over there, project this spread as Creighton -1.5 with an over-under of 150. A reminder, we record this show on Thursday afternoon, so we're doing our best to give you projections on what the spread will be, but obviously those spreads for these Saturday games won't come out until late Friday night, so maybe there's a difference in these numbers that'll lead to value, but we're going to go by our friends at Haslametrics for projected spreads on this show. Eli, you have your ranking for Creighton around where the AP has. You have them at number 19. Butler obviously not ranked. What do you see in this rematch here in the Big East?
Yeah, so Creighton overall has bounced back after that 1-point loss that you mentioned to Butler a couple Fridays ago and losing at Providence in overtime last week too. And Butler coming off of a 2-possession loss to Marquette. Probably should have been by a bit more just because Marquette was winning by double digits throughout much of the second half, or right around that number. Now, the concern for Creighton is opponents over their last 10 games shooting 38.1% from three. Now, if you look at Butler in Big East play, shooting just over 36%. So you would say, traditionally speaking, if you're looking at surface level metrics like 3-point percentage, which to me and to you, I think, are more surface level traditional stats, that Butler should cover, if not win this game outright. And it is a good spot. Butler's NCAA tournament hopes are on the line, a pretty good home court advantage, at least in the context of the Big East at Hinkle Fieldhouse. But I will say, Creighton has gotten unlucky when it comes to their 3-point defense, which is why I'm kind of back in on the Blue Jays. You and I were going back and forth about this very briefly over Slack. We have Creighton futures going back to the preseason. I made that bet, I think, on the opening night of the NFL season, believe it or not. And I don't think this Creighton defense is as bad as that stat would make you think, just because that 3-point defense, generally speaking, is more so luck-based. Now, you can have a rim funnel or a 3-point funnel defense and protect the paint with a no-middle defense, but Creighton doesn't really run a no-middle defense. They use drop coverage with Kalkbrenner, which does allow for open threes, but then again, Butler doesn't really have the big. They start Jalen Thomas, doesn't shoot a lot of threes. I think 10 3-point attempts on the season, so he's not going to really space out Kalkbrenner, and I know Butler had a good 3-point shooting night at Creighton in that upset. I think they're around 7.5 point road dogs 2 weeks ago. But I make this game around Creighton -3. So despite the spot, numbers-wise and with Butler's resume, metrics-wise, being maybe a little bit inflated just because they're out shooting what they should be shooting from deep, I kind of favor Creighton here.
I agree, and even though it's on the road, you know, you look at the first matchup, Butler made 13 threes, shot 59% from the arc, so maybe we get some regression there. I agree with you. If Creighton can somehow figure out its perimeter defense, or at least maybe just draw a path in the brackets where they're not facing a lot of good perimeter shooting teams, they're going to be in business here. Maybe even some small teams that they can face where they can dominate, because inside the arc, they're really good. They are number 1 in the Big East in 2-point field goal percentage defense. They're number 1 in the Big East, number 3 in the nation in 2-point field goal percentage offense. So at both ends of the floor inside the arc, they are elite. So if Butler goes cold from 3 in this game, aren't they kind of screwed here? Like, aren't they required to make threes in this game to stay close? So I agree with you there. On the offensive side for Creighton, you know, you're going to call me a hypocrite here, but I almost think they're taking too many threes. You know, they are top 5 in the nation in field goal percentage from both the mid-range and near proximity, but they're outside the top 300 in the rate of field goal attempts they have from mid-range and near proximity. So I think they need to tick that up a little bit, get a little more efficient, you know, not live and die by the 3 as much as they have. And I think they're in business here. I think you got high upside here potentially.
Yeah, and going back to your point about Butler attacking the rim potentially inefficiently in this game, Ryan Kalkbrenner, if you go back, one of the best defensive centers in college basketball, but let's take a step back to last Saturday against Xavier when Creighton started to take control late in the first half and dominated for the most part in the second half outside of a couple Xavier runs. Musketeers missed 37 shots overall in that game. Ryan Kalkbrenner blocked or contested 16 of them. I think he had 4 blocks in the game overall. Elite defensively, especially around the basket, which you alluded to. And also to your point about Creighton getting more efficient looks at the rim and maybe being less reliant on their perimeter shooting, because that could be an issue for March if you go cold, and for a team that values its transition defense over maybe creating some more second chance opportunities with offensive rebounds. But Ashworth and Kalkbrenner's, the Utah State transfer in Stephen Ashworth, and Kalkbrenner's chemistry has really started to improve of late, especially when you go back to that Xavier game. I watched some of the film. I hate to say like I'm a film guy, but I did go back and watch the game earlier this week. And
good on you.
Thank you. And you look at some of the lobs off of dribble handoffs between Ashworth and Kalkbrenner. That's improved in the last 2 or 3 games, especially in that Musketeers game. And some of their short rolls with Kalkbrenner off of ball screens going to the basket and lobs in pick and roll. So I've been impressed. And that's going to happen when you have a point guard transferring in from a mid-major. Not the strongest point guard defensively overall, especially when you get thrown into the Wolves or thrown against some of the stronger and more athletic teams in college basketball in the Big East, but also just chemistry-wise against one of the better rim rollers in the country, or with one of the better rim rollers. So I've been impressed from that standpoint, going back to last Saturday specifically, and I do think Creighton's going to get more efficient shots, particularly in this game with Kalkbrenner at the rim.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if I don't have a Creighton bet in this game, and I am optimistic that the ceiling is still there for Creighton if they can just tweak their shot selection a little bit and get a little luckier with their perimeter defense. So I'm with you on that one.